All right, so we should be live now. Just need to double check. Yep, it looks like we are live.
Thank you for joining us today. This is the True Progress Podcast. I'm David, and I'm joined here with my two friends, Mr. Parker and Mr. Rousey. How are you guys doing today?
Tonight, doing pretty well.
How is your?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay, we're good. Okay,
yeah, we're good.
So we had two subjects that we kind of wanted to discuss today. One was inspired by a video that Mr. Parker found, a discussion or a debate about the transgender language and what constitutes a woman. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the debate was basically between two people, and the person, so the two sides were arguing basically whether or not the definition of the word woman should or should not be expanded to include trans women as well. So it didn't touch any of the arguments around non-binary things or different pronouns, so it was still in the context of just like kind of male female transitioning, and basically just whether or not it was okay to expand that definition. And I went into the conversation kind of on the side that it's not okay to do that, but I slowly over the course of the 2 hours kind of got persuaded to a little bit more. Now I'm kind of in the middle. so I'm wondering, I guess if you guys had any thoughts about that.
Whether the word woman should include, or women should include trans women?
Yes.
I think so, yeah. That one's not a hard one for me. And I don't really, my standard is kind of liberal, so I'm kind of like, if they consider themselves a woman, then I'll just call them by their preferred pronouns. But even and that applies both to speaking person, like face to face with a trans person, and also when I think about a trans person, I don't think of them as a man, he, this. I mean, sometimes I accidentally do, but I'm also not like, my impulse is not to call them by their, or I guess, their biological gender, because I kind of see it as a socially defined or produced. I wouldn't say I don't want to call it a construct, but that's what that would entail, I guess.
So the whole argument of kind of like the utility of language and increasing ambiguity of language, may possibly reducing that utility and all that stuff,
Well,
that doesn't really hold much water to you or anything like that?
I don't think when it comes to the words man and woman or he and she, I don't see that. I don't see being technical in that with those particular words to be useful. I mean, unless, yeah, I don't really see the utility in. I think there's. I don't think that there's. Yeah, I don't know. There's nothing more I could really say about that. In certain, I mean, whether or not your specificity is, a certain degree of specificity is better, sort of depends on the context. In that context, I don't think that being specific about another person's biology is really necessary, depending upon the context, of course, depending on what they said, or where we are in the course of our own conversation, I guess.
So do you have is there like a line in which you wouldn't cross? Like what about up until the label that they have on their driver's license? Can they put, now that's not woman, right? That's female or male. Like can they then put male?
I think
or female, I guess, in this case.
I think that it would depend, I think, on how ambiguous their driver's license photo is. And because I think that there are, when it comes to driver's licenses, there are specific like identification uses of them, and so on a driver's license, it might be important that you. I don't know. I guess if I guess in that context, it might be somewhat useful, or we would just have another denomination. It's not just strictly male or female. Um,
like
I'm
like MTF or something.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah,
that
well,
would work.
that would be an argument actually more that's even more specific. You
Yeah,
know, like that's just putting M on there and then they look like a female. Maybe then it's obvious if they're presenting as something else. You know, um, but yeah, MTF would even be more specific and provide more utility technically.
yeah. And I think that's just better for identification purposes. Um, for I guess, and for like police purposes. Um, that's kind of like one of the main functions of driver's licenses is they have a place in a policing environment or with police. So yeah, but I would say that I would err on the side of the more specificity there, the better. Um, yeah. What do you think, David?
I think the argument against using the MTF label would be that some trans people probably want to keep their history as being male. You know, they don't want to be associated as who they were before they transition. They want to be associated with, they want to be, if it's M to F, they want to be seen as being feminine and female. And so maybe the MTF or F to M label would for them feel
Yeah,
like it wouldn't be private enough for them,
they would feel othered.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
and
but
I think for most that have transitioned to a, I don't know. Go ahead, David Parker.
I mean, like I kind of forgot what I was gonna say, but that is a good point, though. Yeah, they wouldn't. It's kind of similar to the whole dead naming thing. They don't want. It's offensive, to bring up. Sometimes, I mean, people could be offended by it. To be reminded of that time in their past, But then there's the other side of the coin, the whole other part of the argument, which it's like the whole are they like some might think it's insensitive, to say it, but there is the argument as far as it's a technical, mental illness, and should we be, kind of like encouraging it almost, or should we resist, it in order to help them better, to basically um,
Do you think in this day and age that would you consider? I don't know if I would even consider it I mean, mental illness. I don't know.
Well, I mean, define like can you be born? Because I mean, you can be born with a mental illness and be like a human, right? Like that's completely
Yeah,
obvious. So
yeah,
it's not as if saying that.
I don't know if this case would be considered to be a mental illness because it's well documented that biological males can be born with female brains and that females can be born with male brains, and like there's like a physical difference between both of those.
So why is that? Why is um the dissonance between the body and the mind not an illness? How is that? Like by the strict definition of just illness being
it's
the
a
opposite of healthy.
it's a what was David saying? It's not really a mental abnormality. It's a structural abnormality. It's a body abnormality, I guess.
So it would be a different type of illness.
It would
I don't know.
be an abnormality, but I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying. Does not the APA still classify gender dysphoria as a mental illness, or have they changed that?
They might. I wouldn't defer to APA personally, but
I mean, the APA also used to consider homosexuality to be an illness too, and that's changed. So I think to be on the right side of history would be to say that being transgender is not a mental illness.
Yeah, but I see where that thinking starts and where it ends. I don't know. I just don't think that I would. I think the whole idea of it being like a female brain, male body. I think that's that's certainly something to say and something to believe.
I'm
Probably,
just like, if I'm depressed so much so that I am have a 40% chance of killing myself, anyone else would call me mentally ill because I am mentally ill, right?
right.
I have severe depression,
Yeah.
and yet if something else is causing that depression, it's not all of a sudden. I don't get what the difference
Okay.
is there.
I see what you're driving at.
I mean, it's not that it can't be helped or fixed or anything like that, right? But
But then why
it
does it
shouldn't.
matter? But why does it matter then? Why does it matter that the word usage? Why does the word usage matter? I mean, I see why it would still be technically a mental illness then, but
Well,
um,
it matters because you should be able to call something what something is and not be in fear of someone saying that it's not that
yeah,
when it clearly is, and you're just like, and then being accused of something that you're clearly like the intent is completely not, unfounded, and all this kind of stuff, and people interpret.
right. You're not evil to think that you're not evil to think that we're amoral to think that it's to call it a mental illness because it may even geez, I don't know. I mean, there's this is a complex issue. It's it's sensitive because it's a sensitive issue too because people get very offended. I mean, my general policy when it comes to these issues is to sort of when I'm interacting one on one with just a variable person, I don't just don't take any strong positions on areas that political correctness is designated as sensitive. That's just, but and I really don't see that there's a legitimate context in which it is it's absolutely necessary to um, anymore that it's absolutely necessary to even designate gender dysphoria a mental illness. I don't really see that as being useful for anything. Um, and of course,
Well,
you have to. Maybe
if
please persuade me. Please persuade me because I
well
really want to hear you out.
I mean, if you're gonna, there are people that would define transitioning and transition surgery and all this kind of stuff as, if not a cure, then it's at least a treatment. And you can't have a cure or a treatment for something that's not an illness, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, you have
Uh,
to have something to fix in order to take action to fix it. And so, and I think that so people that actually are advocating for transitioning and all this kind of stuff, which I'm fine with, then I should also be able to say, yeah, that's to help the illness,
yeah.
and
But do
not
you
be
think that
lumped in with people that say that they're just freaks or something weird.
now, if I were to present you with a couple of different alternative words to illness, could you imagine yourself being persuaded by
Maybe.
an alternative distinction? So what if I said, like, what if I were to ask you, um, so perhaps it's not an illness, perhaps we just call it you know, and I think this is something using the word illness, I think probably most of the trans community, or not most of it, I would say probably 60% of it, just from my general feel of really just of the internet, because I don't have many friends I don't have any like anecdotal experience with trans people. Um, I would say that, an illness is certainly one thing, but I don't know. There's, words, the meaning of words derive a lot from context, and the context that we derive, I guess, the context that's most associated with illness is, it's the thing about an illness is that it is curable. When something isn't curable, it's just a defect, right? So
Well, I mean,
there
that's
may be,
not. I mean, is cancer a defect? I mean, technically, you can't.
yeah.
You can just treat it and until it maybe goes away, but it's never
But is cancer an
it's never
illness?
cured. I mean, it's going to come back.
Is
The-
cancer an illness?
The problem with using the word illness to describe a trans person's desire to transition is
Okay,
that
yeah, you're hitting. Yeah, there you go.
it minimizes their it makes them feel like it's what am I trying to say? It's like that their pursuit shouldn't be supported because it's
I
wrong.
just don't agree. I don't agree at all. I think that it should be supported more if it's an illness.
I just wouldn't use the word illness for it. I think there are better words.
Yeah, like
Just-
it doesn't have the right connotation in this
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
Is it because it's not like sensitive enough?
no, it has nothing to do with that. I'm just trying to figure out a more accurate word for it. I just my problem with illness is it doesn't strike me as very accurate.
I mean, I would say that someone who is suicidal, right? That they absolutely deserve
That's
all
an
the
illness.
attention and love that they
Yeah.
need, and all the care and all this kind of stuff, and any opinions that I have towards them are positive, and I really empathize with a
Yeah.
suicidal person, but they're mentally ill, and
Yeah.
it's
In that
coming from the
case-
same place, in my opinion, for that definition.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I disagree, but I mean that's
And I think an illness is something that prevents someone from being a contributor to society in some way, or at least makes it harder for them, right? And okay, maybe you can argue that a um, a pre-transitioned person would probably, probably have a harder time functioning in society because they don't feel like they are who they are inside. But I feel like I don't know. It would be maybe you could say that would just be a person wanting to transition who has mental illnesses such as depression that follow their desire to be to transition. Does that make sense?
yeah, they would agree with your thinking, Parker, that the cure for the illness is to transition. They would just disagree with the use of the word illness. But insofar as what you're saying is the cure is to transition, that's the solution. Would you agree that that's the solution? Transitioning is the solution?
I would say that today it is currently the best solution that we have. I don't think that it is the final solution, simply because I believe that recent studies have shown that's not quite that effective at reducing the suicide rates and these types of things. And satisfaction doesn't really go up very much, but that may be wrong. I might be saying fake news. So,
Okay.
but I would say that a solution would be that they are happy with themselves, right, and that they're now healthy, right, and that they're no longer suffering from this illness,
Yeah,
by being healthy. I mean, that just seems to me
of
like
being biologically I guess biologically gendered or whatever. I don't know, but yeah, I don't think that. I think what makes all of this controversial is not really. It's not really It's just.
It's just the word illness itself.
Yeah. It's the use of it's the throwing around of specific words.
Well, I think it's just because it's
used inappropriately.
Well, no, I think that it's used appropriately. It's just
not in your like the way that most people use the word mental illness. They use to describe. They use it in a way that's negative, right? Or like that. They're like trying to put someone down. Like at least that's what.
Well, we can all agree that regardless of what we call it, it's a problem.
Yeah.
And there is a solution to the problem. And I think right now, as you said, Parker, it's, that's the best that we have right now is transition surgery and hormone therapy and stuff like that. And there certainly may be better options could be better options. If we're being, I think if we want to be as rational as possible, we can't exclude other forms of treatment for it. But honestly, I couldn't imagine another form of treatment for something like that. None. Like, what else would you do?
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that apart, from So instead of working one way and changing the body to match the mind, you somehow change the mind to match the body, right? Which might be seen as, as like, I guess,
Yeah.
changing someone's mind. It might seem like pretty bad, but that's basically any type of
Yeah.
mental issue has to be handled that way. It has to change somehow, whether it's
Yeah. Exactly.
anxiety, depression, or whatever negative emotion you're feeling. So, um, if possible, if there was a brain surgery or a medication, that was discovered that you could take that somehow,
Remove dysphoria without
yeah,
requiring.
exactly, without requiring the surgery and the hormones and all that kind of stuff,
Well,
then
I'd like to hear reports of people that actually have tried alternatives, have achieved satisfaction without transitioning. Um,
well, I think
they're
most.
out
I
there.
think I would just assume that most people like that were probably experiencing the dysphoria throughout their adolescent years, and then when they moved into their 20s, they probably, whether it's growing content with it or whether their brain developed more, and like differently at that point, then maybe, and kind of changed itself or whatever, um, they probably then, just kind of became different from
Yeah.
that point on, which is why a lot of people, that's the main argument why, you want to wait until they're an adult to actually go ahead and, and do anything,
Yeah. Yeah.
irreversible, because it may self-correct at some point, hopefully,
Yeah.
because if it doesn't, and then they go ahead and do this irreversible thing, and then, you know,
That's no good.
it's, yeah, it can definitely be bad, and there have been some nasty experiences that I have read online of people who regret it afterwards, and you can't go back, which is just the worst thing in the world. Can't imagine that. Can't
Yeah,
imagine.
which is definitely why you need to start with hormone therapy first. I think that's the reason for that.
And just therapy in general. To like I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how long you have to be in therapy before at least start talking about your transition or hormone therapy.
Yeah.
It's probably a long time. It should be a long time.
Yeah, it should be.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, you got
Well,
to be absolutely sure.
I mean, like, but it's kind of hard to not see, like the insensitive side of the issue when, because I remember this story that came out of this like elementary school teacher who had a male student that drew. So he like drew himself as like, or he drew. It was either that like he drew his mom or he drew a superhero, and it like looked like they were wearing a dress or something like that. But um, but the teacher saw it of like a person wearing a dress and just assumed, right, that the kid was drawing themselves wearing a dress, and that therefore, they were trans. And it's like, this is an elementary school student, and they like brought the parents in, and they were meeting with the parents about how to go ahead and like start investigating hormones and all this weird stuff. And it was like, whoa, what the heck, dude? Like, it's a picture. um so
I really, on the subject of curing, uh, all new cures for mental illnesses. That's a very if we branch off from the dysphoria topic, that's also a very interesting area, and there's a lot of room for some fun speculation there.
As far as
Depending on, sorry.
like what specifically you're talking about?
Well, I mean, that's why the issue is so interesting because, I mean, you could talk about, there are so many different things that you could talk about when it comes to the brain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how I would initiate it, but I don't know. Maybe you could come up with something specific.
Well, the only thing I could think of is that we're getting closer to treating Alzheimer's, and almost, I mean, by the time that we're
Yeah, the problem about this area is that there's nothing definitive that you can say about any of it, and we don't understand the brain well enough to actually propose anything.
yeah, we can just say like, oh, this seems to work, or this seems to have an effect, but until like a cure is actually definitively, called out, it's just going to be that. So
Yeah.
I wonder like how many like animals have. I wonder if you could count up all the animals that have died through scientific like testing. How like would it reach the moon or something crazy,
Yeah.
crazy like that? I mean, like
Yeah.
how many have died? What's the mass? What's the biomass? Um,
That's
all
a
of
good
the all of
question. I
the
don't know.
all of the rats,
It would say something about the efficacy, though, of our treatments,
all of the
well,
rats who are
and just the sheerly accidental nature of experiment. And
no, yeah, that's because basically, investigating these types of things is just throwing drugs at animals until something sticks, and
yeah,
then and then gingerly kind
yeah.
of handing it to humans.
I'm very interested in where SSRIs came from, and some of the current depression treatments.
we don't
Uh,
even know how they work.
I mean,
We
well,
That,
what do you
that's
mean?
pretty crazy.
What do you
Yeah,
mean by that?
we don't know exactly how they work. There's still kind of a magical quality to them. Like we understand.
Yeah, maybe, but there's like a lot of, I don't know. I think it,
No,
yeah,
like
you're right.
literally
You're right.
molecular level, we don't know exactly. There's this process that
Except for the fact that they affect serotonin and prevent
yes,
its reuptake.
when you take them, they upregulate serotonin. But the reason why you're supposed to take antidepressants or SSRIs for 4 weeks is that in the first week you actually have less serotonin while taking Prozac, say, or any other SSRI than you would without having taken it, and that's because while I can't, I don't have, I took a class on this and I don't remember exactly the details, but it's I'm just gonna say that there's a process that has
Well,
to do
what I
with
know about even more interesting than SSRIs, which seem to me kind of they don't really have a very complex mechanism of action and how in terms of how they affect your like daily brain function. But what's even more interesting to me is we actually have an entire like this a really broad uh we have like pretty broad and like pretty like um complex classes of different kinds of medications that we use to treat other mental illnesses too. Like we have we have depression treatments, but then we have psychotic treatments as well, which is a whole different and a whole different and very strange class of medications. Interestingly enough, though, the common thread when you're looking at like different classes of medicate, the common thread is that either they work on neurotransmitters. So as far as I can tell, we haven't really gotten very far in terms of like specific treatments for specific conditions because who knows what I mean. Depression manifests. We can use SSRIs, but there's also like the efficacy, the like weird efficacy of what is it like? What are they called? What are they? Oh yeah, like thyroid medications work in some cases. I mean, it's really weird. I mean, we really are just kind of like individual practitioners are kind of just like throwing whatever they have at it and seeing what works.
yeah. Right now, ketamine is the biggest thing.
Yeah, and then there's there's this new weird trend that's like, oh, let's look at the effect of illegal drugs, illegal psychedelic drugs, and see if these work. And now they're getting a huge.
Yeah, they're very effective.
They have a following
Mm-hmm.
in the psychological community, but
Yeah, as they should, leave no stone unturned.
yeah, but anyway, yeah, they're not. Um, well, the interesting thing to me is how, um, I mean, the one thing they may be good for is like not regular. They're obviously not like, they're not things that you can really prescribe to be taken on a regular basis because they have to be what they are. They're supposed to have a substantial effect on consciousness, right? So they can't just be like something that you take in your day to day. They can't, it can't be.
There's a high abuse potential.
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, and addiction potential,
Big problem.
but they do say they may be more effective just taken once,
Yeah.
and having it be like this like, one profound experience that like causes you to get beyond like pathologies or whatever, just bad, poorly developed brain networks.
Who's
Or
doing this research? How much is this actually being done?
The biggest contender is Johns Hopkins University. They've published the papers that you could say that have kind of uh, sped up the
they're pretty. I can't tell you exactly what like
legalization of
research institutions are doing it, but it's certainly common enough to be a popular trending thing. But who knows? Who knows who's really done it with that? People are going to latch onto the idea of psychedelics working for anything, and they're going to make it popular.
Well, that's just like marijuana, where
Yeah,
like I remember a few years ago seeing on Reddit people
it's the
posting.
hedonist's bias, I guess. Like for
Well, like people were posting that it would like it helps your like physical health, and like you perform better in sports, and it's like, no, what? No,
yeah,
there's no way. Or like it actually helps your memory, and it's like, no, that's literally
no,
the
no.
opposite.
all of that is
It
very
actually shrinks the brain. In regular users, and this isn't this and of course the easy question is that comes out like the first thing for when you first start thinking about it is, well, is this a symptom or a cause? Is are we like is is it
Are you
that people
using
who are
marijuana because your brain is shrinking?
yeah, oh no, because I don't know, because you're neurologically structured in a particular way. Um, no, but
That's
but
funny.
yeah, that was an interesting effect that's been like observed. I don't see how that could be good.
Yeah, well, I mean, alcohol is the same way. Is basically there is no level of alcohol consumption that is healthy. Any level hurts your brain cells, at all. Like there's
Yeah,
no level that's healthy, and like that's been demonstrated recently quite a bit now. And yet people will still say, "Oh no, I drink
there
regularly
may be
because it's healthy." It's
there
like,
may be
no, dude.
compounds. There may be like other compounds in it that are healthy for the brain, but I think the effects of those are vastly overwhelmed by
Right. I mean, I can
just
get antioxidants from something that's
you
not
can yeah you can
alcoholic, you know?
yeah you can get
Yeah.
an antioxidant effect from eating a Snickers or something from the
Okay.
peanuts.
Is that true?
No, but
Oh, okay. I'm like, what?
it's like uh, that's what I was talking about earlier. People want any possible, they will do whatever they can to justify their habits.
Exactly.
Um, which I just don't. I mean, I think
So, what do you on
sure,
the
really.
topic of like justifying habits? What do you guys think? Because I have my own opinion, but I'm curious if you guys, what you guys, or if you guys have thought about it. As far as the whole addiction thing goes, do you think that? Because some people think that it's not the substance. Some people think it's the substances, maybe themselves. Some people think that it's your personality tendency. Some people think that it's not your personality or the substance, but it's instead environmental factors that are around you that predispose you. Um, some say it's all of them, put together.
Yeah.
I
I
would
mean,
say I would say it's all of them put together. Like it's the
d-
combination of factors.
is there maybe a one that's more important?
I would say some are more preventable than others.
I wouldn't say genetic because I mean you see people from all different backgrounds come down with addiction. So
Right, but alcoholism is genetic.
Yeah, it is. It's an epigenetic and genetic. Um,
interesting.
so
Um,
Native Americans
I
have
think I think obviously it has some basis in one's what would you even call that? Physiology, neurophysiology? I mean, I think that obviously plays into it, um, but to what extent that matter? I mean, I don't know. I think on that level, everyone is predisposed to addiction because we're all kind of disposed to feel unsatisfied generally. Like I don't think that there are any genetically gifted people who just I don't know they're they're good, I guess, metabolizers of the neurotransmitters that you associate with happiness. Or so I'm not sure. I don't really think that's true. I think everyone on that level is probably but you know that's the thing. Maybe there is a genetic component on that level. I don't know. Um, I mean, I don't like to. I don't want to go there because once you've gone, I mean, there's no. Then you're basically saying that I mean, if there are just a class of people who possess these genetic characteristics and they're just uh, set up for addiction, that would suck for them.
Well, I mean, then like any alcoholic knows, you just avoid it, right? The only acceptable amount is none.
Yes.
So I mean, like as soon as you have to know that, right? Like
Yeah.
if you don't know it, then you're kind of screwed. But
But
if
I
you
think
know about it,
yeah, I think though that we're more trying to get at what are the alcoholism is one thing. I
yeah,
don't know, and I also think that access is like this is why I was against the legalization of marijuana in California. And I've like I don't know I'm against the legalization of it anywhere because I don't know if I do think there is some level of efficacy to drug criminalization. I don't know if I don't know if I would agree that although I find it a convincing argument that I just don't I would rather things not be this way. I kind of struggle on this issue too with the conflict of wanting it, thinking that it should be a certain way, and just kind of recognizing what the objective reality is. There may be some, especially with adolescents, there may be some truth to the I guess the forbidden fruit effect, where um, among certain groups you could potentially increase abuse by criminalizing it. I think it's just I think it's just a good deterrent for enough people that it's still useful. And drugs are, I mean, when we're talking about just the broad class of substances that we consider drugs, they're I think they're taboo enough that um, that just in general they aren't. By the general population, I don't know. I don't know what the how much the general population uses them, who uses them, what they use. I'm not sure, but it's kind of when I think about this issue, it's kind of diabolical the way that nature has set things up too, because people really experience some extremely positive psychological effects anyway. They experience a great deal of pleasure from taking these substances, and at the same time that they experience a great deal of pleasure in taking them,
it
they
like is
do a great
killing them.
yeah they do a great deal of damage. And so it to me seems kind of just I mean I don't know, that seems kind of uh
That is interesting. How in the world did that evolve? You know?
um yeah, it is weird.
Well,
And
my
it's
mushrooms evolved psychedelic properties to
but
keep
then also we
insects from eating them,
To keep
people
who from eating them?
insects from eating them. So like insects would
Really?
munch on the psychedelic drug, and they would just go delirious. They would just become too delirious to.
so what causes an insect to develop a and I guess you call it an antipathy to this whatever substance or what causes the human brain to experience immense
You know,
profundity and pleasure
this is just another example of peppers,
of God
right?
being evil.
Well, no, peppers evolved
Yeah.
spiciness
Yes.
so that mammals would not eat them because birds can't taste spiciness, and so they would, and if they're eaten by a bird, their seeds are not as hard, so they would survive the bird's digestive tract and be spread. But things that weren't spicy would be eaten by mammals and wouldn't survive the digestive tract, and so they wouldn't be passed on. And so the spicy traits were favored, and yet humans come back and farm them for their spiciness.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah,
but like some animals, even like flies will fruit flies, I think, will seek out alcohol if they've been sexually rejected, and that's
what?
that's
What?
hilarious. Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. So like, all
Oh
animals
yeah.
enjoy getting
There's
high.
also the whole study that the ocean is full of the ocean is basically full of Prozac. Have you heard that?
No.
It's like been tainted by cocaine and antidepressants, and it's
How?
causing I mean, I don't know, through
Flushing
urine?
down the toilet. I don't know. Urine.
Interesting. All the people flushing down stuff when their significant other comes home.
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
Every
yeah, actually, the funny thing
down
though, they're actually like it's actually producing like legitimate effects on certain marine life forms. Like there's like some weird species of like shrimp that when exposed to Prozac, their inhibitions sort of like decrease, and they'll go to like they'll start like floating toward the sunlight, I guess, and then it causes them to be like predated by, you know, like their natural tendency to stay under the coral or rocks or whatever to avoid their predators is like wiped out, and so they're just like in large numbers they're being just predated.
Predated.
Which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. That's an interesting
An interesting
unintended consequence of things.
Yeah, but I mean, then different, I guess, different antidepressants have different effects. The interesting effect they have on humans is they actually affect libido quite with statistical significance.
Up or
This is
down?
Yeah.
down.
Down. That's why, like, a lot of men
Actually, like depletingly down. Like
Well,
a lot of men,
don't
they'll get off their antidepressants because they can't ejaculate. Like they don't have any sexual desire.
don't antidepressants work by basically, like, if you look at emotions as like a range, they basically just make that range really narrow, and so yeah, you can't get as depressed, but you also can't get as happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I experienced. It depends on the antidepressant. SSRIs are like that. I know.
Yeah, but I definitely see, like, for most people with depression, that narrowing is very few consider that a bad thing. Like
Right.
I think it probably it's worth it to them to give up euphoria to not have to experience what'd you call it, suicidal, I don't know, suicidal feelings or extremely negative
Suicidality.
Yeah, I
Is that
think
what
it's
you were gonna say?
suicidality. I think it's that, but who knows? Who cares?
When I was on Wellbutrin, I just felt high all the time. Like I felt very energetic and like.
Yeah, and I'm really skeptical of anything that would make me feel that much pleasure or like happiness. I think
it didn't make me feel. It didn't make me feel more pleasure. It just made me feel more driven. Like I just felt more energetic and like and kind of more goal oriented.
Did you like that or no? Did it just get old?
Yeah, I got old. Like I think the way I describe it is it cured my depression, but it gave me anxiety.
Oh.
Because I had so much energy all the time, I would just find in every interaction and every little thing, I kind of felt like I had to make it perfect. Like every interaction with people, every.
Oh God, I do remember that anecdotally.
Yeah, everything had to just be perfect. Every interaction, everything. And
the thing about that too is what you're really describing is mania, right?
Yeah, because Wellbutrin is dopaminergic, and high levels of dopamine are like they cause psychosis if you have too high levels of dopamine, which is
mania is this like weird thing that a lot of depressives experience, where it's got something to do with the actual causes of depression and who knows, but that's you could actually consider that that extreme level of euphoria that we associate with mania to be just as much of a defect as suicidality.
Yeah, because it's
Because
like it's a cocaine like high. It's like when a bipolar person is in a manic state, it's like, oh, I'm gonna like max out all my credit cards. I'm gonna start this t-shirt business. I'm going to.
Yeah, pretty much the only reason that I ever have been inclined to like believe that there is to believe that there is either a devil or an evil god is when I examine this like whole issue that we've been talking about on how drugs affect people so positively but have such destructive effects. It's just diabolical that things are are set up that way, at least in that domain. You know, I think the appropriate response too is that we have to be specific about what we consider drugs, and then just encourage as many people as you could possibly convince not to stay the fuck away from them. You know, because they're just not good. They're always going to be there because there's enough of a population that just subsists on them. And I mean, those people are that's I don't understand that either, but I mean, one of the, not really a study that I've read, but I've, which I might as well call it a study because it kind of is that, but is that I think, like, statistically speaking, heroin addicts will, like, there's like a certain number, like, with great statistical significance, heroin addicts will overdose, and they won't just and statistically they won't just, like, that the first overdose won't kill them. It will, before they actually, like, fatally overdose, they will overdose like multiple times. I just don't know what possesses people to act that way. I mean, maybe over some people think, you know, substances like that just exert that much of a. That's Parker. That's what you're talking about. That's the idea that addiction is a disease, and we kind of forgot that you asked that question. We've kind of just been toying around with it, not really getting there.
Let me just address the point about, like, why would someone take drugs until they overdose? Most overdoses of heroin happen when people take a break from heroin and then go back to it, thinking that they can take the same dose they took when they got off of it, and then they just end up dying because their body.
There is now with
a shock.
Like EMTs are now equipped with a opiate antidote, I think called naproxone, which is given to heroin overdosers to reanimate them.
Yeah,
I won't say like fully resuscitate or. It's only something that can be used in the event of an overdose. It's not a prescription medication to deal with heroin
overdose
addiction.
and then take a shot of that. Gosh,
it's just a reanimator. So, you know, which I guess, you know, if I think for most people who have overdosed on heroin multiple times, they probably don't want to be reanimated, which raises a whole. I mean, if we have the ability to reanimate, then that's just where the law tends. That's what needs to be done, which I think is probably. I think that tends to be a good thing, but I also think that it not being. I think there being less of a capacity to reanimate might exert some, like, positive Darwinian effect on the population too, but that's kind of a controversial view, so I won't really take that position. I'll just kind of throw it out there.
Well, we moved quite a bit away from the is a woman what is a woman conversation.
Dysphoria disease. Yeah.
I had another thing that I wanted to talk about, unless you guys have more about about this topic.
No, we could move on.
So in the news lately and everything, there's been a lot of rhetoric like foreign aid. Well, and not even just in the news lately, but if you look back decades ago, right, you find a lot of people saying in America that socialism is immoral, and then it's all this bad stuff, and then you have then that caused a well, I don't know which came first, but basically you have these two sides calling each other's economic system immoral, right, and that their own one is moral for different reasons, and that and so now that conversation is still remains, right? It's still a debate today on which one is more moral or and why and all this kind of stuff. And me personally, I kind of come from the perspective that economic systems are amoral. I mean, I don't really understand how one could. I mean, I could easily be persuaded one way or the other. I'm not. I'm not even on the fence. I'm nowhere. And so I'm just curious what you guys think about the morality of different economic systems, why one would be more moral than the other, if they're moral at all. If not, why not? It's
Okay.
kind of a
That's a good
lot.
question. It's a big
I,
question.
don't, I think I would be kind of in the same park as you, where I don't think that any system is moral in itself.
So I mean, like, because I've heard, okay, capitalism is moral because it allows agency, right? It allows the most freedom. It allows freedom of.
That ultimately, I think, it depends on are we on Earth, or have we expanded Earth? Have we expanded beyond Earth?
Why does that matter?
Do we just have, because I think that capitalism also produces maybe not the effective, maybe it depends. It depends on how well capitalism is regulated, but um, unrestrained capitalism, I think, does not have, like, you have to think about the environment that capitalism is like occurring in. Um, unless we've accounted for that, and I mean, I think regulating capitalism on Earth is sufficient because I like capitalism, honestly. Um, I like regulated capitalism, but I like the balance between like giving people as much agency as possible, which I think ultimately allows them to reach their highest productive potential. Um, and I like all of those effects of capitalism, but some of the, I guess, at the same time that people have to be given agency, they also have to be more than self-interested. You know what I mean? Like, an ideal person would not, like, I mean, I think we wouldn't really be able to define, like, or we might even be able to define, based on objective criteria, how an ideal moral agent would behave. But I think in the world that I live um, in the world that I live in, agency is a good thing, and like I said, that's one of the virtues of capitalist systems is their enhanced agency. Um, but on the other side of that, there's I guess, there's the characteristic of self-interest, and to the extent to which self-interest is regulated by a global perspective, a a consequential perspective, something like that. An ideal moral agent would strike a balance between the positives of the virtues of capitalism and agency, and the negatives of capitalism and excessive, unrestrained self-interest. You know what I'm kind of know what I'm going for there?
Yeah, so I mean, you're kind of just arguing that what sounds to me, I'm interpreting that you're saying that it's not that capitalism is necessarily
Conducive.
moral. It's that there's two sides to everything, and that you can't just let it. You try to increase the positives and decrease the negatives
Yeah,
as much as possible. Which
yeah,
makes sense to me. It's pretty common sense.
yeah. Um,
I mean, I come from the perspective that, like, if you put people on a desert island, they're going to eventually start trading things, and then they're going to create a shorthand to trade in between, whether they be leaves or whatever. I mean, you're going to have capital, and it's like if if there's no capital, I mean, that's what capitalism is, right? It's having capital and being able to make profits and all this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, that right there is to me, it's completely amoral. There's nothing that it says about what that capital does, about what um, there's no restrictions on anything. It's a very broad definition, and that I think actually arises naturally. I don't think that it's something that, not necessarily, right? There could be situations in which you don't need to trade things and you don't need capital. Maybe, and these would be seen in communities that are very, very small and that are very sustainable just on themselves. But I think if you scale that at all, you need to have some type of thing that holds value in between transactions and trading and all this kind of stuff. And that so
Yeah.
yeah, I think that economics lives completely outside the realm of morality, and that it's not, and you can look at specific instances of things, and then you can pull out the effects of which that might make that specific situation moral or not.
Yes. And there's
But
actually a good historical case for capitalism too. Uh, they're kind of normative, but I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Uh, with test, there we've sort of been able different population. The good thing about having different countries, different population groups, and different cultures is that each one is sort of an experimental sphere. They can test out different laws and different norms and different different systems, and you know the our American capitalism may not be quite so good maybe as uh, like English, like British capitalism or Canadian capitalism. Those might be a bit better in terms of progressive like protections and better regulations of capitalism. But I think American capitalism is pretty damn good because the way that that's a big statement, but I mean the way that things have tended throughout American history is we've kind of learned from our mistakes as crises occurred. I mean, that may be true for any group, but I think I might just be saying that about American history because I know most about American history. Um, you know, we had um, we had the Depression of the 1930s, which had various causes, and then afterward we had FDR, and we had this whole revolution around which the essential effect was to sort of establish social controls and safety nets to sort of ensure that if things tend that way again, that it wouldn't be so bad. Um, because I guess it's another thing about capitalism, economically speaking, and uh, this is like one of Marx's criticisms of it, which is actually true, but it might not be as bad as Marx uh, says it is. But it does produce cycles of I guess growth, and it produces not growth. It produces like it tends to produce. It tends to be kind of cataclysmic in how it and the like effects that it produces. It's sort of a swinging back and forth between recession and whatever the opposite of that is. Um, so uh, yeah, that's one of the. But the thing about that is if we recognize that's just going to happen, because
right.
we've established the limits of what capitalism can be and what it can be defined as, then we can accommodate for it. And then if we accommodate for it, then it actually doesn't happen. And so,
Right. Well,
I,
and that's why people would argue actually in favor of deficit spending, is because, like, you would, um, in those times of prosperity, right, you would pay off your debts, and then in those low times you would then, so it's kind of like using the state safety nets to offset that natural cycle by incurring debts and by spending on safety nets during the downturns in capitalism, and then when it swings back up, and things
yeah,
go up, then you pay off the debts. But
yeah,
that's not currently what's happening. because no matter what, we just keep going more in debt. So there's never, I mean, Congress hasn't passed a budget in how long? When was the
Yeah.
last Congress budget? I mean, because they spend, they just pass spending resolutions, right, or continuing resolutions. They don't actually spend, they don't actually pass budgets, because budgets have to be balanced.
Yeah.
Yeah, since 2001, I think it looks like on Wikipedia, 2001 was the first continuing resolution. So I mean, like, absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Needless to say.
Which is a huge criticism to Republicans, because they were in charge for quite a long time during the 2000s and kept on not passing balanced budgets, you know, and not paying off debts and everything. Now, the Obama administration did not help that at all because they like were like doubled or tripled the debt, you know. But yeah, but both sides do it.
Yeah.
I mean, because a big part of the morality issue, right, is that so the left side of the argument is that so two pronged, that basically socialist system, or a socialist system similar to that, like democratic socialism or something along those lines, or you know, I mean, you know, a progressive person's wet dream could be that there's no more profit in companies, and that there's no more, you know, like in like basically rich investors or anything like that. Instead, companies form by cooperative worker associations, and all their costs or all their profits basically have to be then recycled back into their employees or their workers, instead of going outside of that to pay off, you know, other things, you know, like investments or whatever, or investors or anything like that. And so, I mean, that's like a very specific example of kind of a capitalist, socialist kind of like, you know, hybrid, which I guess is more palatable than a, you know, top-down gulag type you know,
Yeah.
confiscation of things and murder of rich people. But people, you know, would absolutely go farther and say, okay, not only is it moral then, so the first prong is that it's moral to own your labor, that second of all, it's also then moral to uh, eliminate those who have owned your labor beforehand, you know, or something like that, or that anyone who got rich was by exploitation of other people's labor, which I don't
I
see,
don't.
because
It
you,
depends.
well, yeah, no, it completely depends, because if you're talking
It's
about
entirely
slavery, yes, but if you're talking about a contractual,
relationship.
mutually beneficial like, you know, thing in which you are completely free to disengage yourself from the contract, you know, at any time, then I
Yeah.
don't see how that could be immoral.
Yeah. There isn't much I wouldn't say there's much exploitation in the United States today, because for those that work within the United States, there are regulations that, you
There
know.
are lots of
Yeah.
regulations. Yeah.
Now, for those that outsource labor to avoid regulations, shouldn't be able to do that. For one thing, I don't think that's fair competition.
But I don't know of a capitalist system in which the owner says, I need an employee, you random person work for me, you know, and then like and then like, you know, pay them half of what they want, and then it's like, what? No, you have to apply for the job, and then they have to accept you, and all, you know, like, it's not, they don't just enslave you and like go into your house and like take you away, you know, and then now you're working in their
Yeah,
factory. I mean,
and I
maybe
think
that's
Calif-
existed, but and that
I
would
think
obviously be bad.
yeah, and ultimately, what it comes down to with anything is the wage, and because that's the only way. I mean, that's the only way to measure how much of a benefit that how much of a, I guess, a mutual benefit there is to a contractual relationship, right? And the way, and that's so easy to regulate. I mean, it's all that you do. You just have to establish a minimum wage. That's all that. I mean, it's pretty easy.
Well,
And
it's
I know that.
harder to decide where that line is, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if it is because, that I mean, I think what economics tells us is that there potentially there wouldn't be enough wealth to go around, that establishing too high a minimum wage would either cause more unemployment because they wouldn't hire as many people, and they would streamline everything so that they could get by on as few people as possible. I think the reality is that I don't think that's an inevitability of increasing the minimum wage. Certainly, I think when it comes to corporations and franchises, there is enough wealth to maintain the convenience of having that many people working for you at the minimum wage. Even if it is like $15 an hour. If we're talking about like huge corporations, then it's just not.
I don't know. I'm still not. I still am not convinced a minimum wage is necessarily beneficial. I would rather see, instead of the companies being forced to, essentially what you're forcing them to do is shrink their workforce. So I mean, it's like you're saying
You
you
think
have
that
the same budget for employees, right, as last year, except you need to spend more. So
yeah,
I'm
but
just
then more
going to
people.
hire less, you know?
Yeah, but
I'm going
then
to fire people, I'm going to lay off people. And
yeah,
I
but
would
then
rather people get paid little than none, you know?
Yeah, but then your consumers have more money, so technically your profits would be greater
How do your consumers
because the minimum wage is higher. They're making more money.
Okay, so if everyone has more money, then that's inflation, and that now but because you have to look at the value of the money, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So yes, your costs went up, and your consumers also maybe went up, depending on the industry that you're in, right?
yeah,
I mean, it could be that your employees are also other businesses, in which case now your business is going to go down because they're going to spend less elsewhere where they can. And if your services aren't needed, they're going to cut you out. And then maybe you go out of business and have to fire all your workers. And so, I mean, there's all these other things. So, yeah, the businesses which are uh, providing services to minimum wage people, could, I guess, benefit. Um, I'm just saying I would rather there be a very robust system in place for people to get what they need rather than legislating it to force other people to to force corporations to provide what people need. It's like if they're successful enough
interesting.
to
Yeah,
to pay their employees a very good wage like Costco or something, plenty of people are going to work there forever. They're never going to go out of business, and that's amazing and that's awesome. And if people know about that, it's a great PR, thing, and people know about them for it. And yet, if they're like Walmart, right, everyone hates Walmart. So it's like, I mean, which one, I guess, would you rather be? Now, Walmart definitely makes a lot more money, and they're definitely
yeah.
very, very successful. But
This
I
sounds like
like
my high school libertarian wet dream, but I mean, it actually makes sense though. It's a perfectly legitimate line of argument.
Well,
What type
except
of,
a libertarian wouldn't want a safety net.
Yes,
Like,
what
yeah.
type of safety net would you want then? Like, what would that look like?
my ideal is
Competition among businesses for higher and lower wages.
well, no, my like you're asking what would I want the government to provide? My
Yeah.
my
Yeah,
ideal is Milton Friedman's idea of a negative income tax. So it's basically a instead of there being brackets to income tax, it's done as like there is a set level of in which if you make this much, it's a net zero, and then if you make more than this, there's some function that is applied, which basically says how much you pay. But then if you make less than that, it's the same function just going down, and then that's how much you get. And so it's a way to actually get it's basically a way to implement a universal basic income, except only for those that need it. And
And
that
would
it never actually is it doesn't have the same weirdness of brackets as like now I'm paying a different percentage on what I'm making above this level or anything like that. Like it's not like that. It's just like as you make more, you slowly pay more of a percentage, but you're always taking home, more money. I mean, just like it is now, but the exception is that it goes in the reverse now. And so it's like, let's say the line is at 30,000, right? That's like the 0 point. And then if you make $20,000, you're not owed 10,000, but you're owed a percentage of 10,000. Just as if you made 10,000 more, you don't like that's how much you pay taxes on. So you don't pay the whole 10,000. You pay a percentage of the 10,000. Does that am I making sense?
Yeah, like if
Okay.
you're unemployed, what would you get? Would you get nothing, or would you get?
So you would make a percentage of up to the 0 point. So you would make a percentage of, if it's at 30,000, you would make a certain percentage of 30,000. Now, if I increase my my income to 5,000, I then get a percentage of 25,000, but it'll be less than, but I'll get 5,000. Like I'm always making more money, right? Because of the way the percentages work. So just as like an example, if that percentage is, let's say, like half, right? So I'm going to make half of the 30, so I get 15,000 instead, just guaranteed. And then if I make 5,000 more that year, now I get half of 25,000, which would be 12 and a half. So 12 and a half plus 5 is 17 and a half. So I'm still making 2,500 more money,
Oh, okay.
even though I'm like technically getting less from but I'm still making more. So it doesn't like it doesn't have the effect that a universal basic income might have, where it's like I'm already getting this, like I don't want to get less if I work or something like that, because sometimes there's some danger of losing the safety net if you get a job or something. If you increase your income, you lose something, and then it's a net loss to you, which is just stupid. So, but yeah, I mean, Friedman was a really capitalist guy. And that was kind of his idea.
Would it be applied like yearly or monthly? Like you would get this income.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I probably yearly, but but it would probably, if it was a realistic thing, it would probably be split up into months. I think that we should have to pay taxes outright. I mean, I think that it should be like rent. I think you should have to cut a check every month to the IRS. I do not think it should be taken out of your check. I think that way more people would realize how much money they're having to pay, and would be more apprehensive about voting for tax increases, and they would be more careful and more they would think more. They would hold their representatives to a higher degree, and all this kind of stuff, and they'd be more careful with their own money, because if you don't pay your rent, you're evicted. If you don't pay taxes, you go to jail. So yeah, they would be better about paying their bills and everything. But no, I think you should have, because that's what people who own their own businesses have to do. I mean, that's what my parents have to do. They cut checks every couple months, and then at the end of the year, they it's just kind of like, okay, did you pay enough? Maybe. So
That's really interesting. I don't know about sending people to jail if they can't pay their taxes. I mean, like if they're
well,
unable, like wouldn't that prevent them from ever, like wouldn't they just be like at the
Well,
bottom?
I think the argument is that would encourage them to pay their taxes.
Right, but inevitably people aren't going to be able to. I mean, there's going
well,
to
then
be.
so what exactly is the punishment for not paying taxes?
Increased taxes?
I have no idea. To me, this just sounds like
Fines?
that keeps poor people at the bottom if they're unable to keep up with their taxes.
No, I mean, I totally get what you're saying, but I mean, that's like what happens now, right? If you don't, like, if I don't pay, if I owe taxes at the end of the year and I don't pay that, there's going to be a warrant, like I'm gonna have to pay some way.
Yeah, but people who don't have any income. So you're suggesting that there's just a flat rate that people pay. Everyone has to pay taxes, right? Is that what you're suggesting?
Oh no, okay. I'm saying that of the taxes that you have to pay, you should have, instead of them coming out of your paycheck, you should have to pay. You should have to actually write a check.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were suggesting a flat rate or like that everyone.
No.
Okay, I gotcha.
No, I think flat tax doesn't make any sense.
Gotcha.
Myself.
Yeah, not good for the government and not really good for most people.
It's not good for the poor. It's not good for
Yeah.
anything. I mean,
It's
there
not good
there
for
is
revenue.
there is an argument to be made for a flat tax with a very, very okay. So basically, you have a flat income tax, except sales tax has different brackets, and so there's different categories of items that are necessities or whatever, they're not taxed. Items that are like, kind of walk the line of you don't really need them, but you kind of, do. It's nice to have kind of thing. They're taxed a little bit, but then as you get higher and higher in the luxury stuff, they get taxed a lot. And so that's an interesting argument because that would be a consumption tax, which I think is more. I think that consumption taxes are better for the economy than income taxes because you're taxing like the actual spending of money instead of the making of money, so it's just different. But I think that makes sense. I think because it would a income tax or a consumption tax that taxes luxury items a lot at a different rate would it would impact the rich more. It's still progressive. It's still a progressive system. So I could see either way, but
Yeah.
I couldn't see a flat or non-existent sales tax with a flat income tax. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that it's technically fair, but it's also not fair. Like,
Yeah. And the negative income tax. So I guess up to a certain like amount of income, up to a certain income level, you pay the tax, and then for those that fall below that income level, they're refunded money. Is that
they're
the
refunded a portion of the difference between their income and that.
and the income level that's taxed?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, interesting.
So yeah. So if they made the income level that's taxed, they're still making more money than if they made, less than that or anything like that.
Okay, I see. I see.
So they can never be given more money that they would otherwise, get for free, essentially, or that they would otherwise be able to make themselves.
So what do you think about Amazon not
Oh,
having?
and wait, really quick. And then with the negative income tax, it still is. Well, it's obviously graduated. You were against a flat tax.
Oh yeah, no, there would be some function applied to it, whether that be, yeah, whatever the curve looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, there would be some type of curve along there. So it would, but I think a graduated thing instead of
Instead of a negative income tax, so that even those that are at a certain, yeah, I think, gee, I don't know. I think when it, I think that was sort of Friedman's way of trying to integrate a safety net into the tax system to accomplish maybe two things at once. But
yeah, I mean, I think that, and I think it does it though.
it does, yeah. But I think even people being at, I think some from those that, I mean, what I'm saying is, I don't know if I would ever, I don't know if I would establish a level at which taxes begin. I think I would just graduate it from the bottom. But I
Well,
can
I
see
mean,
what the logic is.
it could be that the level well, the idea is that you would be able to there's no safety net if you start at the bottom. If you just tax anything that anyone makes, there's no safety net there.
Yeah, but I mean,
I mean,
well,
if I
yeah,
make
and
if I make
ultimately,
$1,000, it's like why would we tax that? Like, obviously you need that.
because I'm a penny pincher and I'm scowling in my I'm the evil capitalist politician scowling in my you know what I mean, I mean, I don't know, I just I think that would, you have to be careful about where you set that, minimum, I guess,
Yeah, I just think
to
it's a really
avoid
great
that problem.
idea because a lot of people don't understand when they when they get their tax refund, that's not you're not getting new money or anything like that. You're getting your money back,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
it's not that it's giving you additional money. And so this system would actually then give you additional money on top of that. And so it would actually, but not as much as if you actually, you know, made more yourself. For every dollar you make, you're
Exactly. Yeah.
making more than you would be getting. Because
Yes. Yes. While at this point, people that pay more into it get more out of it, so their returns are much higher. I could see how. Okay. Yeah.
well, I mean, he proposed this so long ago, right? And I don't understand why like it's not a
Yeah.
thing.
I read that this year, not many people are getting less money in their refund.
Yeah.
And
Sorry,
why?
go on.
No, just why is that?
It's because they're being taxed less, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
people were criticizing the tax cuts because, oh, well, it cut my refund. Yeah, because you were taxed less, you got more in your paycheck. It's like that's, I mean, that's why I think we should have to pay taxes every month. It's like, if I see my checks go from writing, 200 a month to 180 a month, clearly I'm making 20 more dollars. Except you know except at the end of the year, if I get like 1,800 instead of 2,000, it's like, oh well, I got less money. Well, yeah, because you paid less. It's you kept
Yeah.
more of your money. It's like it's
Yeah. This is delectably interesting.
I also read that Amazon won't have to pay any taxes at all.
So yeah, that's because so this is true for any company that exists. If you have experienced significant losses in the past, you can write those off in the future. And that's to incentivize not just going bankrupt and closing down business, because it's like, I have so much in debt, that I have so much incurred costs, basically, that there's no way I can make a profit. They're going to say, okay, we'll let you make profits. We'll let you write these debts off, basically, so you won't have to pay tax. And so it's just to incentivize businesses that take a while to kind of start up, and it just so happens that Amazon is really, really good and has, teams of people making sure that they are in debt just enough, that they don't
Oh, I
have to pay
see.
tax.
Okay, that makes sense.
And there are different things that you can write. You can write off tons of stuff. You can write off if you invest in this or invest in that, or if you pay this or do that or whatever.
I still don't. Yeah, they write off so much that they're able to avoid being taxed. I don't. Why not? I don't know. I
Well,
think there would be more profit to them if they just
but
changed the
but keep
tax.
in mind, of the hundreds of thousands of employees they have, they pay income
Yeah,
taxes, like,
yeah,
they pay payroll tax. They all pay taxes. Every sale that's done through them is taxed. So it's
yes.
not as
Okay, I
if
see.
they're
Yes,
not generating any taxes. It's just
yeah,
that their corporate taxes,
yes.
they
The
don't have to
added
pay.
tax is on. Yeah. Okay. Huh.
I mean, it's just like people who don't pay income tax. A lot of people say, "Oh, there's 50% of people don't pay tax." No, I'm pretty sure they pay tax on anything they buy. They pay payroll tax. They pay all these other things, especially in states. They pay gas taxes, whatever. But it's like, yeah, this one specific tax they don't pay. That doesn't mean they pay no taxes. So Amazon still generates a ton of money for the government, just in different ways.
Right. Things are much. Yeah.
But you can't take away that rule and then not have it negatively affect other businesses that only exist because of that rule.
Yeah.
Right, right. Amazon is just an extreme example of that.
Yeah, it's just an exception, really.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This is the point in the dialogue where each one of us is kind of just waiting for the next one to talk. And
And you're up.
yeah. um, No, I was going to suggest that I enjoyed our conversation tonight, but I was going to suggest that we come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied. I'm
Adjourn.
satisfied with our conversation. Very satisfied. I think it went well.
Yeah, so we talked about what we think in terms of the language used to describe transgender people and whether or not it's a mental illness. And we also talked about, we went on a whole journey.
It was it's almost impossible to recap because I don't even know what determined the definitely better to sort of just free flow from the first topic. I mean, that was the way to do it. I definitely see the logic, though, of for moments when we are kind of ready to move on and we're wrapping up one topic. I do see the logic of having a list of stuff, though, that we could then just go to and, just press the button and start that conversation,
I think for now we should just say thank you for listening, and we'll talk about how this went.
Yeah.
If you guys for listening.
If for some reason,
For people that did.
if for some reason someone else can hear my voice right now, go ahead and subscribe.
Yes, please do that.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Until next time.
Yes.